Imagine finding out you're finally pregnant, then being marched to the gate of your own mansion with nothing but a prepaid phone and a storm coming. Tonight, you'll meet Madison Sterling, a small-town teacher turned billionaire's daughter-in-law who's accused of the unforgivable: fake texts, doctored photos, and a psychiatric hold, waiting to make her disappear. But here's the question Victoria Sterling didn't plan for. Who's really pulling the strings in this family? And what happens when the quietest man in the empire decides he's done being quiet? In the next hour, every door opens to a bigger lie: a hospital that refuses care, a podcast that vanishes overnight, a facility where treatment looks a lot like a sentence, and a hidden camera that flips the story in a single breath. Stay with me for the wiretap, the courtroom, and the moment a mother chooses legacy over fear and wins. If this has you leaning in, tap, like to push the story out, drop your boldest prediction in the comments, share with a friend who loves twists, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the reveal and the fallout. Madison Sterling stood in the marble bathroom of her Greenwich mansion, staring at the pregnancy test with trembling hands. Two pink lines. After 3 years of trying, 2 devastating miscarriages, and countless IVF treatments, she was finally pregnant again. This time felt different. The morning sickness was stronger, the exhaustion more profound. Her body was telling her something her heart desperately wanted to believe: this pregnancy would last. She pressed her hand against her still flat stomach and whispered, "Please stay with me, little one. Please." The bathroom door opened and Connor appeared. Soon, his phone pressed to his ear as always. At 32, he was the epitome of tech executive success: sharp jawline, perfectly styled dark hair, and suits that cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was in the middle of closing another multi-million-dollar deal for Sterling Technologies, the empire his father Alexander had built from nothing. "Hold on, Shanghai," Connor said into the phone, noticing Madison's tears. He covered the speaker with his hand. "Babe, you okay?" Madison held up the test, unable to speak through her joy. Connor's eyes widened. For a moment, his corporate mask slipped, revealing genuine emotion. "Really? You're sure?" "I'm sure," Madison managed, her voice cracking. "And Connor, I think there might be 2. The HCG levels from yesterday were through the roof." "Twins?" Connor's face lit up with an expression Madison hadn't seen in months. He ended his call abruptly. "Shanghai can wait. Madison, this is incredible." He swept her into his arms, spinning her around the bathroom. For a brief, beautiful moment, they weren't the mismatched couple that society gossips whispered about. The small-town teacher who'd somehow snagged the billionaire's son. They were just 2 people who'd fought through fertility hell and finally found hope. "We should tell my parents," Connor said, setting her down gently. "Mom's been asking." "Not yet," Madison interrupted, her joy dimming slightly at the mention of Victoria Sterling. Her mother-in-law had never approved of her, making that crystal clear through 1,000 small cruelties. "Let's wait until after the first trimester. Please, I just want this to be ours for a little while." Connor nodded, understanding her hesitation. "Whatever you want. But Madison, she'll be thrilled. A grandchild, maybe 2. That's all she's wanted." Madison forced a smile. Victoria Sterling didn't want grandchildren. She wanted heirs. There was a profound difference. One Madison had learned through 3 years of marriage. 2 weeks later, Connor was in Singapore for a major acquisition. Madison sat in her doctor's office, watching the ultrasound screen with wonder. 2 heartbeats, 2 perfect little beings growing inside her. She recorded it on her phone to send to Connor later, tears streaming down her face. "Everything looks perfect, Mrs. Sterling," Dr. Adams assured her. "The babies are developing beautifully. You're at 14 weeks now, well past the highest risk period." Madison finally felt safe enough to exhale. She'd made it further than ever before. These babies were fighters, just like their mother. That evening, she sat at the massive dining table in the Sterling mansion, alone as usual when Connor traveled. The house staff moved silently around her, phantoms in black and white uniforms. She missed her tiny apartment in Columbus, where she could hear her neighbors laughing through the walls, where life felt real and warm. Her phone buzzed, found Connor, finally responding to the ultrasound video. Incredible. Showing this to the board members. They're thrilled about the Sterling legacy continuing. Mom's going to be ecstatic. Madison's heart sank. He'd told his mother before she was ready, before they'd agreed, but that was Connor. His mother's opinion always came first, even in their most private moments. Victoria Sterling stood in her pristine white office, staring at the private investigator's report with calculating eyes. At 58, she was still strikingly beautiful in that preserved way that only serious money could buy. Her pharmaceutical empire had made her one of the wealthiest women in America, but it was her strategic marriage to Alexander Sterling that had cemented her place in the true halls of power. "You're certain about this?" she asked Marcus Webb, the investigator she'd hired to do a routine background check on Madison when Connor had first started dating her. David Brennan, Federal Correctional Institution, Otisville, 15 years for embezzlement. He's Madison's biological father, not deceased, as she claimed. She's been visiting him monthly for years, though she stopped after marrying your son. Victoria felt a cold satisfaction spreading through her chest. She'd always known there was something off about that girl. Too sweet, too perfect, too eager to please. Now she had proof that Madison was a liar, a gold digger from criminal stock who'd trapped her son with this pregnancy. "There's more," Marcus continued, sliding another folder across the desk. "These are from yesterday." Victoria opened it to find a series of photographs. Madison at a fertility clinic, but not alone. A man was with her, tall, sandy-haired, his hand on her lower back in one shot, embracing her in another. The angles were perfect, suggesting an intimacy that went beyond friendship. "Who is he?" Victoria demanded. "Jake Morrison. They dated for 6 years before she met your son. He's been in New York for the past 3 months, working on some podcasts. They've met 4 times that I've documented." Victoria studied the photos more carefully. The way Madison looked at this man, the comfortable familiarity between them, it was nothing like the careful distance she maintained with Connor. These images, combined with the father's criminal history, painted a clear picture. "Can you enhance these? Make them clearer?" Marcus understood immediately. The lighting was poor. Digital enhancement could help clarify what's actually happening in these moments. "Do it. I want irrefutable evidence that my son is being played for a fool." 2 days later, Victoria had everything she needed. The enhanced photos were damning. What had been an innocent comfort between old friends now looked like secret lovers meeting. The metadata had been expertly altered to place them at a hotel, not a clinic. Marcus had even created supporting evidence: fake text messages, fabricated hotel receipts, a paper trail that would hold up under casual scrutiny. Victoria scheduled a family dinner for Connor's return from Singapore. She insisted Madison attend, playing the part of the excited grandmother-to-be. Madison arrived wearing a flowing dress that couldn't quite hide her growing bump, her face glowing with pregnancy hormones and happiness. "You look radiant, dear," Victoria said, air kissing her daughter-in-law's cheeks. "Connor's flight lands in an hour. Why don't we wait for him in the study?" Madison followed her mother-in-law, unaware that 50 of New York's elite were gathering in the ballroom next door for what Victoria had advertised as an emergency charity auction. The trap was set. Connor arrived home exhausted but happy, eager to see his pregnant wife. He found them in the study, his mother pouring whiskey despite knowing Madison couldn't drink. "Son, we need to talk," Victoria began, her voice grave. "About Madison, about the pregnancy." "Mom, not now," Connor protested, moving to Madison's side. "We're celebrating." "Are we?" Victoria interrupted, sliding the folder across the coffee table. "Because I think we're being deceived." Madison watched in confusion as Connor opened the folder. His face transformed from exhaustion to shock to rage as he flipped through the doctored evidence. The photos, the receipts, the text messages, all painting her as a cheating wife carrying another man's child. "Connor, what is this?" Madison asked, reaching for the folder. He jerked it away from her. "You tell me. You and Jake? At the Ritz? While I was traveling?" Madison's blood turned to ice as she saw the manipulated photos. "This isn't real." "Connor, you know me. This is fake. Someone did this." "Stop lying." Connor's voice cracked like a whip. "My mother had you investigated. Your father, he's not dead, is he? He's in federal prison. You've been lying since day one." The room spun around Madison. The father revelation was true. She'd been too ashamed to admit her father's crimes, telling one lie that had snowballed. But the photos, the affair, none of that was real. I can explain about my father, but Connor, please, the babies, these are your babies. I've never been with Jake since we married. These photos are fake. Victoria stood up smoothly. Security has packed your things. You'll leave now quietly, or we can do this publicly. Your choice. Connor, Madison pleaded, grabbing his arm, you're really going to throw out your pregnant wife based on this? Without even listening? Connor wouldn't look at her. In that moment, Madison saw the truth. He was weak, a little boy who'd never grown beyond needing his mother's approval. The man she'd thought she married didn't exist. The double doors to the study burst open. Two security guards entered, their faces professionally blank. Madison recognized one, Thomas, who she'd always been kind to, whose daughter she'd helped get into private school. He wouldn't meet her eyes now. Please come with us, Mrs. Sterling, Thomas said quietly. Madison stood on shaking legs, her hand protectively over her bump. My purse, my phone, my prenatal vitamins. Your belongings will be forwarded, Victoria cut in smoothly, though I doubt you'll need them where you're going. The walk through the mansion felt like a funeral march. As they passed the ballroom, Madison heard the chatter of voices, the clink of champagne glasses. Victoria had planned this, a public execution disguised as a private matter. The massive front doors opened to reveal a cold March evening. No coat was offered, no car was waiting. Thomas walked her to the gate, a quarter-mile in her thin dress and heels. Thomas, please, Madison whispered. You know me. You know I wouldn't. I'm sorry, he said, genuine regret in his voice. There's an Uber credit on this phone. He slipped a cheap prepaid phone into her boy. $20 on it, that's all I can do. The gates closed behind her with a metallic clang that echoed in her bones. Madison stood on the dark road, shivering, the prepaid phone her only lifeline. $20. She was 14 weeks pregnant with twins, and she had $20 to her name. She ordered an Uber to the only place she could think of, her friend Emma's apartment in Brooklyn. Emily Carter was a civil rights lawyer, fierce and brilliant. They'd met at a pregnancy law support group after Madison's first miscarriage. The ride felt eternal. The driver kept glancing at her in the mirror, taking in her expensive dress and devastated expression. Madison watched her life disappear through the window, the manicured lawns of Greenwich giving way to the concrete jungle of New York. Emma answered her door in pajamas, her face shifting from confusion to alarm. Madison, what happened? You're freezing. They threw me out, Madison said, then collapsed into her friend's arms. Emma guided her inside, wrapped her in blankets, and made her tea while Madison told her everything. The investigation, the fake photos, Connor's betrayal, Victoria's calculated cruelty. This is illegal, Emma said, her lawyer brain already working. They can't just throw you out. You have rights, marital property, spousal support, especially while pregnant. We'll file emergency motions first thing tomorrow. She has judges in her pocket, Emma. The Sterling name? I don't care if she owns the whole justice system. We're going to fight this. That night, Madison lay on Emma's couch, feeling her babies move for the first time. Tiny flutters like butterfly wings. I'm going to protect you, she whispered to them, no matter what. The next morning, Emma took Madison to court to file for emergency support and return of her belongings. The clerk looked at the Sterling name on the paperwork and paled. I'll need to speak with my supervisor. 3 hours later, they were told that all filings regarding the Sterling family needed to go through special channels. It would take weeks, maybe months. Emma was furious, but she wasn't giving up. She started making calls, pulling favors, trying to find a judge who wasn't in Victoria's pocket. Madison sat in Emma's tiny office, watching her friend fight for her, feeling a spark of hope. That spark died at 4 p.m. when Emma received a certified letter. The New York State Bar is investigating me for ethics violations, Emma said, her face ashen. Anonymous complaint about misappropriation of client funds. If I don't cease all legal action regarding your case immediately, they'll suspend my license. She's destroying you because of me, Madison said, horrified. I won't stop fighting. Yes, you will. Madison stood up, decision made. I won't let her ruin your life too. You have a daughter to feed. Madison, no, this is my fight now. Madison left Emma's office with nowhere to go. The $20 phone had $3 left. She walked for hours, her feet bleeding in the designer heels, until she found herself at a homeless shelter in Queens. The intake worker, a kind woman named Carol, took one look at her designer dress and swollen belly and pulled her aside. "Honey, you're pregnant. We have special resources." "Twin pregnancy," Madison said numbly. 14 weeks. Carol's face softened further. "There's a women's shelter specifically for pregnant women. It's safe, clean. Let me call them." But when Carol made the call, her expression changed. "I see. No, I understand." She hung up and looked at Madison with sympathy and fear. "I'm sorry, they're full, as is every other shelter I might call. Someone very powerful doesn't want you to have a bed tonight." Victoria's reach was absolute. Madison spent that night on a park bench, her arms wrapped around her belly, talking to her babies to keep from going insane. "Your daddy doesn't know the truth," she told them. "Your grandmother is sick, but we're going to be okay. We're going to survive this." Dawn came slowly, bringing with it a cold rain that soaked through Madison's dress. She'd been awake all night, every sound making her jump, every shadow a potential threat. The babies hadn't moved since midnight, and terror was eating her alive. She needed medical attention. The stress, the cold, the lack of food, it was all too much. Madison dragged herself to the nearest emergency room, her appearance causing a stir among the staff. "I need to see a doctor," she said at the registration desk. "I'm 14 weeks pregnant with twins, and I haven't felt them move in hours." The registration clerk asked for her insurance card. Madison's heart sank. I don't have it with me, but I'm Madison Sterling. My husband is Connor Sterling of Sterling Technologies. You can bill—" The clerk typed something into her computer, then frowned. "I'm showing your insurance was terminated yesterday. Without insurance or payment, I can only offer you basic emergency services if you're actively in distress." "I am in distress. I'm pregnant and homeless, and are you experiencing bleeding or contractions?" "No, but—" "Then I'm sorry. You'll need to pay up front for an ultrasound. That's $1,200. Madison stared at her in disbelief. Even the hospital was against her. She turned and walked out into the rain, despair threatening to swallow her whole. That's when she saw him, Jake Morrison, standing under an umbrella by a coffee cart, looking exactly as he had 3 years ago when she'd broken up with him to date Connor. Same warm brown eyes, same crooked smile, same inherent kindness that Connor had never possessed. "Madison?" His voice was shocked. "Jesus, what happened to you?" She tried to walk past him, but her legs gave out. Jake caught her before she hit the pavement. "Hospital," she gasped. "Please." Jake didn't ask questions. He swept her into his arms and carried her back into the ER, his press credentials and forceful personality getting them past the same clerk who'd turned Madison away. "This woman is 14 weeks pregnant and in distress," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If you turn her away and something happens to those babies, I'll make sure every news outlet in the country knows this hospital refused care to a pregnant woman." Suddenly, Madison was on a gurney, being wheeled into an examination room. Jake stayed by her side, holding her hand as the ultrasound wand moved over her belly. 2 heartbeats filled the room, strong and steady. "Your babies are fine," the doctor assured her firmly, "but you're dehydrated, malnourished, and your blood pressure is dangerously high. What's going on?" Madison couldn't answer through her sobs of relief. Jake answered for her, spinning a story about a domestic situation that wasn't far from the truth. The doctor's expression hardened. "We'll keep you for observation," she said, "and I'm calling our social worker." Over the next 6 hours, as IV fluids restored Madison's strength, she told Jake everything. His initial disbelief turned to rage as he realized what Victoria had done. "Those photos," he said. "She used our meeting at the clinic, when you asked me to be the baby's godfather if something happened to Connor. She turned something beautiful into something ugly," Madison said, "and Connor believed her. He didn't even question it." Jake was already on his phone, typing furiously. "I'm an investigative journalist now, Madison. This is what I do, expose corruption, tear down the powerful. Victoria Sterling just became my next target." "Jake, no, you don't understand what she's capable of." "Neither does she understand what I'm capable of." His eyes were fierce. I've got a podcast with 2 million subscribers. Let's see how Victoria likes being in the spotlight. The social worker arrived, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia, who took one look at Madison's situation and immediately started making calls. Within hours, Madison had a bed at a women's shelter Victoria didn't know about, an appointment with a pro bono lawyer, and food vouchers for a month. Pregnancy changes things, Patricia told her. There are resources Victoria Sterling can't touch, organizations that operate outside her sphere of influence. That night, in a clean bed at the shelter, Madison listened to Jake's emergency podcast episode. He didn't name names, he was too smart for that, but he painted a picture of corruption and cruelty that had his audience demanding more information. The comments section exploded with similar stories, women who'd been destroyed by powerful families. The hashtag had justice for the pregnant wife started trending. Connor was in his office when his assistant knocked urgently. "Mr. Sterling, you need to see this." She handed him an iPad showing Jake's podcast numbers. 3 million views in 12 hours. The story was going viral. Connor's phone started ringing. Board members, investors, all asking the same question. Was Sterling Technologies the company being exposed? "Get my mother," Connor said, his voice tight. Victoria Sterling stood in her white office, watching the social media firestorm with cold calculation. The podcast hadn't named them directly, but the details were specific enough that insiders were connecting the dots. Her phone buzzed constantly, society friends fishing for gossip, board members expressing concern, and most annoyingly, Alexander calling from Tokyo. She ignored her husband's call. He'd been an absent figure for years, more interested in his Asian markets than family drama. Let him stay in his bubble while she handled this mess. "We need to shut this down," she told Marcus Webb, her investigator. "The journalist, Jake Morrison, he needs to be silenced." Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "That could escalate things. If anything happens to him now—" "I'm not suggesting violence," Victoria said smoothly. "But everyone has a price or a pressure point. Find his." Within 24 hours, Marcus had what Victoria needed. Jake Morrison had a younger sister with special needs who required expensive care. The facility she lived in was owned by a company that Victoria's pharmaceutical empire supplied. One phone call, and the sister would lose her spot. Victoria composed a simple message to Jake: "Cease all coverage immediately, or your sister Amy loses her care facility placement. You have 6 hours to delete all content." Jake received the message while sitting with Madison at a prenatal appointment the shelter had arranged. His face went white as he read it. "She's threatening Amy," he said, his voice hollow. "My sister has severe autism. She's been in the same facility for 5 years. If she has to move—" Madison watched the man who'd been ready to fight crumble before her eyes. "Jake, I'm so sorry. You have to protect Amy. Delete everything. But your story isn't worth your sister's safety." Madison took his hand. "You tried. That means everything." Jake deleted the podcast episode, posted a retraction citing factual errors, and watched 3 years of credibility evaporate. His subscribers turned on him, calling him a sellout, a liar. Victoria had won again, but she wasn't satisfied with just silencing Jake. The problem, Madison, still existed. Connor found his mother in the greenhouse, tending to her prized orchids with mechanical precision. "The podcast is gone," he said, "but the damage is manageable," Victoria finished. "We'll spin it as a desperate woman's attempt to extort the family. But Connor, we need to discuss a permanent solution." "What do you mean?" Victoria turned to face her son, her expression eerily calm. "Madison is 16 weeks pregnant now. Those babies, if they're even yours, will tie us to her forever, unless—" "Unless what, Mother?" "Unless she's proven mentally unstable, unfit. If she were to be committed for psychiatric evaluation, and if during that time she were to lose the pregnancy due to the stress of her delusions." Connor stepped back, horrified. "You're talking about forcing a miscarriage?" "I'm talking about protecting our family from a gold-digging criminal's daughter who tried to pass off another man's children as Sterling heirs." "We don't know that for sure." Victoria's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. "Don't we? Look at the evidence, Connor. Look at who she really is. Her father stole millions. She lied about his death. She met with her ex-lover secretly. Either you're a fool or you're choosing to be blind. Connor struggled with the doubt his mother had planted. The photos looked so real. Madison's lies about her father were confirmed. What else had she lied about? "What do you need from me?" he asked quietly. "Sign the commitment papers. As her husband, you have the authority. One signature, and this nightmare ends." Connor took the papers with shaking hands. At the top, emergency psychiatric hold order. Madison was at the shelter, helping prepare dinner for the other residents, when Patricia, the social worker, burst in. "You need to run, now." "What?" "Someone just called asking about you. They're coming with commitment papers. If they take you for psychiatric evaluation, you'll disappear into the system. Take this." Patricia pressed cash into Madison's hand. "There's a domestic violence shelter in New Jersey that's completely off the grid. Go now, don't pack, just go." Madison ran, her heart pounding, the babies tumbling inside her as if sensing her fear. She made it to the bus station just as two official-looking cars pulled up to the shelter. On the bus to New Jersey, Madison felt her phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. "Your husband signed the papers. They're coming, but you need to know the truth. Check your email. A friend." Madison's hands shook as she opened her email on the shelter's borrowed phone. There was a single video file. She pressed play and saw Victoria's office. The angle suggested a hidden camera. Victoria was speaking to someone off-screen, Marcus Webb, based on the voice. "The enhancement work on those photos was excellent, Marcus. No one would guess they were taken at a fertility clinic, not a hotel." "The metadata changes were seamless," Marcus agreed, "and the text message fabrication held up perfectly." "Good. My son believes his wife is a whore, and soon she'll be locked away where she can't embarrass us further. Sometimes I amaze even myself." The video ended. Madison stared at the screen, her mind racing. Someone in Victoria's inner circle had recorded this. Someone was trying to help her. But who? The off-grid shelter in New Jersey was a converted farmhouse 40 miles from anywhere, run by an ex-Marine named Sandra, who'd lost her own daughter to domestic violence. She took one look at Madison's designer maternity dress, an exhausted face, and didn't ask questions. "You're safe here," Sandra said simply. "Victoria Sterling's reach doesn't extend to my property." Madison nearly collapsed from shock. "You know who I am? Honey, every women's shelter in the tri-state area knows your story. That podcast before it got deleted? We all heard it. You're not alone anymore." For the first time in days, Madison felt like she could breathe. The shelter housed 6 other women, all hiding from dangerous situations. They welcomed her with the fierce solidarity of survivors. That night, Madison played the video of Victoria's confession over and over. She had proof now, but what could she do with it? Any lawyer she approached would be threatened. Any media outlet would be silenced. Victoria had made herself untouchable. 3,000 miles away, Alexander Sterling closed the biggest deal of his career, acquiring a Japanese logistics company for $12 billion. At 62, he should have felt triumphant. Instead, he felt empty. His phone had been buzzing all day with messages about some scandal involving Connor and Madison. He'd ignored them all, assuming it was another of Victoria's society dramas. His wife had managed the family's personal affairs for 20 years while he built the empire. It was a division of labor that had worked. But something made him listen to his voicemail that night. 5 messages from board members, all concerned. 3 from Connor, sounding increasingly unhinged, and 1 from a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Sterling, you don't know me, but I know what your wife did to your daughter-in-law, your pregnant daughter-in-law. Check your private email, the one only 5 people have." Alexander's blood chilled. His private email was unhackable, known only to his closest circle. He opened it to find a series of files. The doctored photos, the original images from the fertility clinic, bank records showing payments to Marcus Webb, and finally the video of Victoria confessing to framing Madison. He watched his wife destroy an innocent woman's life with the same casual cruelty she used to destroy business rivals. But this wasn't business. This was family. This was his grandchildren. Alexander made 3 calls. First, to his head of security, bringing him up to speed. Second, to his pilot, ordering immediate departure to New York. Third, to the one person he trusted to handle this quietly, Patricia Hayes, the social worker who would help Madison. Patricia was also his cousin's daughter, though Victoria never knew about that family connection. Uncle Alex? Patricia answered, surprised. It's been years. I know what you did for Madison Sterling. Where is she? I can't. Patricia, I'm her only hope. Victoria's going to find her, and when she does, I need to get to Madison first. There was a long pause. She's in New Jersey, Sanders Farm Shelter. But Uncle Alex, if you're playing some game, the only game I've ever played is letting Victoria run my family while I ran my business. That ends now. The Gulfstream took off within the hour. Alexander spent the flight reviewing everything his security team had uncovered. Victoria hadn't just framed Madison. She'd been systematically destroying anyone who threatened her position for years. Her first husband's suicide, Connor's college girlfriend's mysterious overdose, a board member's wife's sudden mental breakdown. All trails led back to Victoria. Madison was helping with breakfast when Sandra appeared in the kitchen doorway. There's a man here to see you, Alexander Sterling. Madison's blood ran cold. He's with Victoria. Don't let him. He's alone. Has been sitting in his car for an hour, waiting for permission to approach. Says he has something you need to see. Madison looked at the other women, all ready to form a protective wall around her. I'll talk to him, but not alone. Sandra nodded. We'll be right outside. Alexander Sterling looked older than his press photos, his face gaunt with what Madison recognized as shame. He stood when she entered, and she saw Connor's eyes in his weathered face. But where Connor's eyes were weak, Alexander's held steel. I know what Victoria did, he said without preamble. All of it. The fake photos, the threats, the commitment papers. I know about your father, the real story, not Victoria's version. I know those babies are my grandchildren. He placed a tablet on the table between them, showing bank records. This is a trust I established yesterday. $50 million in your name alone. Victoria can't touch it. Connor can't touch it. It's yours regardless of what happens next. Madison stared at the number, unable to process it. I don't want your money. It's not mine, it's yours. Compensation for what I allowed my family to do to you. His voice cracked slightly. I was in Tokyo, building empire after empire while my wife destroyed everything good that came near her. That's on me. Connor signed the commitment papers, Madison said coldly. Your son tried to have me locked away. Connor is weak. He always has been. Victoria made sure of that. Alexander pulled out another document. But I'm not. This is a restraining order against both Victoria and Connor. Emergency custody agreement giving you full rights. And this, he pulled out a phone, hitting play on a recording. Victoria's voice filled the room. Of course the babies are Connor's. The paternity test confirmed it weeks ago. But if Madison were to miscarry during her psychiatric hold, well, stress does terrible things to a pregnancy. Then we could tell Connor they weren't his after all. He'd believe anything at that point. Madison's hand flew to her mouth. Victoria had planned to kill her babies and then lie about their paternity. How did you get this? The same person who sent you that first video. Someone close to Victoria who's been documenting her crimes for years, waiting for the right moment. Alexander stood. Madison, I'm going to destroy her. Legally, financially, socially. But I need your help. Will you trust me? Madison sat in the back of Alexander's armored SUV, watching New Jersey transform into New York through bulletproof glass. Sandra had tried to talk her out of leaving, but Madison knew she couldn't hide forever. Not with twins growing inside her, not with Victoria still hunting her. Where are we going? She asked Alexander. My personal attorney's office, Margaret Walsh. She's handled every major crisis in my career, and she's the only lawyer in New York that Victoria can't intimidate. Because? Because Margaret has been documenting Victoria's crimes for 15 years. She was my first wife's best friend. Madison's head snapped up. Connor's biological mother? Elizabeth. She died when Connor was 12. Suicide, they said. But Margaret never believed it. She's been waiting for the right moment to prove it was murder. The revelation hit Madison like ice water. Victoria killed Connor's mother? poisoned her slowly with medications from her own pharmaceutical company, made it look like Elizabeth was self-medicating for depression. I was traveling constantly, building the empire. I believed what Victoria told me. Elizabeth was struggling, needed help, and then one day, his voice trailed off. You married your wife's murderer? I married the woman who comforted me in my grief, who stepped in to raise my son, who seemed like salvation. Alexander's knuckles were white on his knees. By the time I suspected the truth, she'd already sunk her claws too deep. Connor loved her. The business was entailed with her pharmaceutical empire, and I had no proof. Until now. Until now. Margaret Walsh's office occupied the top floor of a building that predated most of Manhattan's skyscrapers. She was 75, sharp as a surgical scalpel, with eyes that had seen too much but still burned with purpose. Madison, she said, taking the younger woman's hands, I've been waiting 16 years to meet someone brave enough to stand up to Victoria Sterling. The war room Margaret had prepared was overwhelming. Walls covered with timelines, photographs, documents. Victoria's entire criminal history laid out like a prosecutor's dream. 3 suspicious deaths, 6 destroyed careers, dozens of lives ruined, Margaret said. But she was always too careful, too connected, until she went after you. Why was I different? Because you're pregnant, because Alexander finally woke up, and because, Margaret smiled grimly, someone in Victoria's inner circle has been feeding us information for years. Who? Before Margaret could answer, the door opened. Marcus Webb walked in, and Madison instinctively stepped back. It's okay, Alexander said. Marcus is our source. Madison stared at the man who'd helped destroy her life. You? Marcus's face was etched with self-loathing. I've been Victoria's investigator for 10 years. I've done terrible things for her. But when she asked me to doctor those photos of you, knowing you were pregnant, knowing what she planned, he pulled out a hard drive. Every crime she's ever asked me to commit is documented here. Every payment, every threat, every cover-up, including recordings of her ordering me to fake evidence. Why help us now? Madison demanded. Because my daughter is your age. Because I couldn't sleep anymore. Because Victoria finally crossed a line even I couldn't stomach. He looked at Alexander. She's planning something bigger. She knows you're back from Tokyo. She knows you're helping Madison. She's not going to let you destroy her without a fight. Alexander's phone rang. Connor. Father, where are you? Mother is... His voice was slurred, panicked. Connor, what's wrong? She gave me something, said it would help me sleep, but I can't. Everything's spinning. She's saying I'm having a breakdown, that I need help. There's an ambulance. The line went dead. She's drugging Connor, Madison gasped. She's going to have him committed. Alexander was already moving. She's eliminating witnesses. If Connor is institutionalized, he can't testify about the fake photos. Margaret, file everything now. Emergency injunctions, criminal charges, everything. The judges, wake up every judge in New York if you have to. Marcus, you're going to the FBI, today, now. Oh, what about Connor? Madison surprised herself by asking. Despite everything, he was still the father of her children. I'll handle Connor, Alexander said. You need to disappear for 24 hours while we destroy Victoria's network. Can you do that? Madison thought of her babies, of the strength they'd given her. I've survived this long. I can survive one more day. Victoria Sterling stood in her pristine white office, watching her empire crumble in real time. Every news channel was running the story. Pharmaceutical heiress accused of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. The FBI had raided her offices at dawn, seizing computers, documents, 20 years of carefully hidden crimes. Marcus Webb was in federal custody, singing like a canary. Margaret Walsh had filed 17 separate lawsuits. And Alexander, her pathetic workaholic husband, had finally grown a spine. But Victoria Sterling didn't become one of the most powerful women in America by folding under pressure. She had one last card to play. She picked up her phone and made a single call. DeMorrison, it's Victoria Sterling. I need you to initiate Protocol 7. Across the city, Madison was in protective custody at an FBI safe house. watching the news with a mixture of relief and dread. Victoria's arrest was imminent, but something felt wrong. It was too easy. Victoria didn't surrender. She scorched earth. Her fears were confirmed when Patricia burst in. "We need to move you, now." "What's happening?" Victoria just had Connor committed to her private psychiatric facility, the same one where 3 of her enemies mysteriously died. And she's claiming you're a danger to yourself and others, that you need immediate intervention. But the restraining order doesn't matter if you're dead. Patricia was already packing Madison's things. She's activated something called Protocol 7. My contact at the facility says it's a full lockdown, no oversight. Whatever she's planning. The lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. FBI agents were shouting, radios crackling with confusion. Someone had cut power to the entire block. "Move, move, move!" The lead agent grabbed Madison, practically carrying her toward the exit. They made it 3 steps before the windows exploded inward. Smoke grenades filled the room with thick, choking clouds. Madison couldn't see, couldn't breathe. She felt hands grabbing her, pulling her in different directions. Then, a familiar voice in her ear. "I've got you." It was Thomas, the security guard from the Sterling mansion, the one who'd walked her to the gate that terrible night. "I'm sorry," he whispered, then pressed something against her neck. The world went black. Madison woke in a white room that smelled of industrial disinfectant. Her wrists were strapped to a hospital bed. Her mouth was dry, her vision blurry. But worst of all, she couldn't feel the babies moving. "No, no, no," she moaned, struggling against the restraints. "Ah, you're awake." Victoria entered, wearing a doctor's coat like armor. "Welcome to Serenity Hills, my private facility. You've been admitted for acute psychosis with violent tendencies. My babies are fine, for now." Victoria pulled up a chair, her expression serene. "You see, Madison, I own this place. The doctors, the nurses, they all work for me. And according to their reports, you're going to have a complete psychotic break in about 6 hours. You'll become violent, requiring restraint and medication. The stress will trigger a miscarriage. Tragic, really. Alexander knows. Alexander is currently dealing with Connor's overdose. Oh yes, my son apparently tried to kill himself. So unstable, just like his biological mother. He'll need months of intensive care." Madison's heart shattered. Despite everything, she didn't want Connor dead. "You poisoned him, your own son." "I saved him from weakness." Victoria stood, smoothing her coat. "He was going to betray me, choose you over family. I couldn't allow that." "You're insane." "No, dear, you are. At least, that's what the death certificate will say." Victoria moved to the door. 6 hours, Madison. Say goodbye to your bastards." She left Madison alone, trapped, feeling her baby's frightened movements as if they knew what was coming. 5 hours and 45 minutes later, the door burst open. But it wasn't a doctor with poison. It was Alexander, flanked by FBI agents in tactical gear. "Cut her loose," he ordered. As the restraints fell away, Madison sobbed with relief. Alexander helped her sit up, his face grim. "Victoria? In custody, real custody this time. We recorded everything." She was so confident, she didn't check for wires. Madison's hand flew to her neck, feeling the tiny device Thomas had placed there when he drugged her. "Thomas? Has been working with us for months. We needed Victoria to confess, and we knew she'd only do it if she thought she'd won." Alexander's voice was heavy with regret. "I'm sorry we used you as bait, but it was the only way." "Connor?" Alexander's face darkened. "Alive. Barely. She gave him enough oxycodone to kill a horse. He's in the ICU, but he'll survive. Whether he'll ever forgive himself is another question." The trial of Victoria Sterling became the most watched legal proceeding in New York history. Madison sat in the witness box, 28 weeks pregnant now, her belly round with the twins who'd survived everything their grandmother had thrown at them. "Mrs. Sterling," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell the court about the night of March 15th? Madison spoke clearly, without emotion, laying out the facts. The fake photos, the expulsion, the homeless nights, the murder attempts. The jury, 12 ordinary people, listened with growing horror. Victoria's defense tried to paint Madison as a gold digger, a liar who deceived everyone about her father. But when they showed the doctored photos, Marcus Webb took the stand and explained exactly how he'd created them on Victoria's orders. When they claimed Madison was unstable, the FBI played the recordings from the psychiatric facility. The most damaging testimony came from Connor himself. He entered the courtroom in a wheelchair, still recovering from his mother's poisoning. He looked at Victoria with eyes that held nothing but devastation. "She told me my whole life that family came first," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But she destroyed our family. She killed my biological mother. She tried to kill my wife and children. She nearly killed me. All for control." He turned to Madison then, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I failed you. I failed our children. I chose her lies over your truth, and I'll never forgive myself." Madison couldn't respond. The man she'd married was gone, replaced by this broken shell. She felt pity, but not love. That had died the night he'd thrown her away. The verdict was unanimous. Guilty on all charges. Murder, attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. The list went on. Victoria Sterling was sentenced to life without parole. Her pharmaceutical empire dissolved. Her assets seized. As they led her away, Victoria looked at Madison one last time. "You think you've won? You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." Madison stood, her hand on her belly, feeling her children move. "I'm their mother. That's everything." 6 weeks later, Madison gave birth to two healthy boys, Daniel and Christopher Rossi. She'd chosen to give them her name, not Sterling. They would grow up free from that poisoned legacy. Alexander was there for the birth, the proud grandfather who'd earned his place through action, not blood. He held each baby with tears streaming down his face. "Elizabeth would have loved you," he told Madison. "You're the daughter-in-law she would have chosen." Connor was not there. He'd signed away all parental rights from his hospital bed, knowing he was too damaged to be a father. He'd entered intensive therapy, trying to rebuild himself from the ground up. Madison didn't hate him for it. Some people were too broken to fix, and her children deserved better than broken. Emma, her lawyer friend whose license had been restored after Victoria's conviction, handled the divorce. It was swift and uncontested. Madison received everything: the houses, the money, the Sterling name if she wanted it. She didn't want it. Instead, she used the $50 million Alexander had given her to start the Elizabeth Sterling Foundation for Domestic Violence Survivors. She bought a brownstone in Brooklyn, close to the shelter where Sandra had saved her life. She hired Patricia as the foundation's director and Thomas as head of security, redemption for them both. Redemption for them. Jake Morrison rebuilt his podcast, telling Madison's story in full with her permission. It became a documentary, then a book, with all proceeds going to the foundation. He married a fellow journalist and asked Madison to be his best man at the wedding, a request that made them both cry laugh. 2 years later, Madison stood in the garden of her Brooklyn brownstone, watching Daniel and Christopher toddle after butterflies. They had Connor's blue eyes, but her determination, her strength. They would never know the cold mansion in Greenwich, never feel the weight of the Sterling legacy. "Mama, catch!" Daniel threw a ball that went approximately 2 feet. "Good throw, baby," she laughed, scooping him up. Alexander visited every Sunday, transforming from corporate titan to doting grandfather the moment he walked through the door. He'd retired after Victoria's conviction, dedicating his remaining years to being the father and grandfather he'd failed to be before. "Any word from Connor?" he asked during one visit, watching the boys play. "He sends letters. I don't open them." Madison's voice was matter of fact. "The boys will decide for themselves when they're older, if they want to know him." "That's fair." Fair would have been him believing me from the start. Alexander nodded. "I have news. Victoria died yesterday. Heart attack in prison." Madison felt nothing. The woman who tried to destroy her was gone, but it didn't bring satisfaction or closure. Victoria had been a poison that Madison had already purged from her system. "Does Connor know?" "He's been told." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the boys chase bubbles that Patricia was blowing. The garden was full of women and children from the foundation, all survivors building new lives. "You know what the strangest part is?" Madison said suddenly. "I'm grateful. Alexander looked at her in surprise. If none of this had happened, I'd still be in that mansion, slowly dying inside, raising my children to be as empty as Connor. Victoria's cruelty freed me. It showed me how strong I really am. You were always strong, you just needed the chance to prove it. Christopher ran over, grabbing Alexander's leg. Pop, pop, airplane! Alexander lifted the giggling boy, zooming him around the garden. Daniel immediately demanded his turn. Madison watched them, her heart full. Her phone buzzed with a text from her new boyfriend, David, a pediatrician she'd met at the hospital during the boys' checkup. Nothing serious yet, just coffee dates and long talks about everything except her past. He knew her story, everyone did, but he saw her as Madison, not as a victim or a survivor or a headline. Pizza tonight? His text read. I can bring that organic stuff the boys like. Sounds perfect, she typed back. As the sun set over Brooklyn, Madison stood in her garden surrounded by chosen family, her children's laughter filling the air. The mansion in Greenwich felt like another lifetime, a nightmare she'd wake from. She'd lost everything, her marriage, her security, her innocence about how cruel people could be. But she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. Herself. The doorbell rang. David stood there with pizza boxes and a shy smile, and the boys shrieked with joy because they adored him almost as much as Madison was starting to. Bad time? He asked. No, Madison said, meaning it completely. Perfect timing. As she welcomed him in, she caught Alexander watching with approval. He'd investigated David thoroughly, of course, but found nothing but a good man who worked 60 hours a week saving children's lives and volunteered at free clinics on weekends. He's nothing like Connor, Alexander had told her. I know, Madison had replied. That's the point. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the boys were asleep, Madison stood in their nursery watching them dream. Daniel had his thumb in his mouth. Christopher was spread out like a starfish. They were perfect and innocent and would never know the fear she'd known. Her phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Madison? The voice was broken, barely recognizable. Connor. She should have hung up. Instead, she walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. How did you get this number? I've been sober for 6 months. The therapy, it's helping. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I needed to say, I remember now the real photos from the clinic. You asking Jake to be godfather. You were so happy that day, so beautiful. And I destroyed it all because I was too weak to stand up to her. Connor, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I know the truth now. All of it. What she did to my biological mother. What she did to you. What I let her do. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Madison closed her eyes. I know you are. Could I maybe see a picture of them? She thought about it for a long moment. Then she sent him one photo, the boys laughing in the garden, covered in finger paint, pure joy on their faces. His response was immediate. They're perfect. They look like you when you smile. Thank you. That was the last time they spoke. Connor continued his therapy, eventually becoming a counselor himself, working with others who'd been controlled by narcissistic parents. He never tried to contact the boys, respecting Madison's boundaries. He sent money every month, not court-ordered support, but donations to the Elizabeth Sterling Foundation. His way of making amends to all the women Victoria had hurt. Madison used the money to expand the foundation, opening shelters in 5 cities. Each one had a garden where children could play, where women could grow things, where life could begin again. At the 1-year anniversary gala, Madison stood before 1,000 supporters and told her story one more time. But this time, she told it differently. People ask me about revenge, she said, looking out at the sea of faces. They want to know if I'm satisfied that Victoria died in prison, that Connor lost everything. But revenge isn't what saved me. Love did. The love of friends who risked their careers for me. The love of strangers who offered shelter and kindness. The love of a father-in-law who chose justice over family loyalty. And most of all, the love of 2 little boys who gave me the strength to survive when I wanted to give up. She paused, seeing Alexander in the front row, tears on his weathered face. Victoria Sterling thought she could destroy me because I came from nothing, but that was her mistake. When you come from nothing, you learn to build something from anything. From pain, from fear, from rage. You build strength. From isolation, you build community. From betrayal, you build truth. She gave me the materials, and I built a life she could never have imagined. The applause was thunderous, but Madison wasn't finished. So to anyone out there who's been kicked out, cast off, betrayed by people who were supposed to love you, know this: your story isn't over. Your strength is greater than their cruelty. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's survival. It's thriving. It's building something beautiful from the ashes they left behind. As she left the stage, David was waiting with the boys. Daniel reached for her, saying, "Mama strong," while Christopher clapped his chubby hands. "Yeah, baby," she whispered, holding them close. "Mama's strong, and you will be too." 5 years passed. The boys started school, bright and confident and kind. Madison's foundation had helped thousands of women escape situations like hers. She testified before Congress about domestic violence laws, her story changing legislation. On a quiet Sunday morning, she sat in her garden with coffee, watching Daniel try to teach Christopher to ride a bike. Alexander was there, as he always was on Sundays, reading the business section, but really watching his grandsons. "There's something I never told you," he said suddenly. Madison looked over, curious. "The anonymous messages, the ones that started everything, I know who sent them." Her breath caught. "Who?" "Elizabeth." "But she's dead." "She is, but before she died, she set up a system. A dead man's switch, she called it. If Victoria ever tried to hurt another pregnant woman the way she'd hurt Elizabeth when she was pregnant with Connor, the system would activate. It would send evidence to key people. She knew I'd eventually remarry. Knew Victoria would eventually show her true colors again. Elizabeth protected you from beyond the grave." Madison's eyes filled with tears. A woman she'd never met had saved her life. "She left something else," Alexander continued, pulling out an envelope yellowed with age, "to be given to whoever Victoria tried to destroy. I've been waiting for the right time." Madison opened it with shaking hands. "Dear sister in survival, if you're reading this, you've faced Victoria's cruelty and lived. I wasn't strong enough. The poison she gave me while I was pregnant with Connor weakened me beyond repair. But I made sure she couldn't do it again without consequences. You are stronger than I was. You survived what I couldn't. Please know that every moment of pain you endured had a witness in me, even from beyond. I couldn't save myself, but maybe I helped save you. Protect your children. Love them freely. Give them what I couldn't give Connor, a mother who lived. All my love and strength, Elizabeth Sterling." Madison pressed the letter to her heart, sobbing. In that moment, she felt Elizabeth's presence like a warm embrace. Two mothers, connected across death itself, protecting each other's children. "Thank you," she whispered to the sky. "I'll love them enough for both of us." That night, as Madison tucked the boys into bed, Daniel asked, "Mama, why don't we have a daddy like other kids?" She'd prepared for this question, but it still made her heart clench. Some families have mommies and daddies. Some have two mommies or two daddies. Some have just one parent. But you know what makes a family? "What?" Christopher asked, eyes wide. "Love, and we have so much love. We have Pop Pop and Aunt Patricia and Uncle Thomas and David and all our friends at the foundation. Our family might look different, but it's perfect for us." "Is our daddy dead?" Daniel asked with the blunt curiosity of a 5-year-old. "No, baby, he's alive. But he's sick in his heart and his head, and he can't be a daddy right now. Maybe someday you can meet him, when you're older if you want to." "Does he love us?" Madison thought carefully. "I think he loves you the best way he knows how. But sometimes love isn't enough if someone can't show it in healthy ways. That's why we have all these other people who love us and show it every day." The boys seemed satisfied with this, curling into their beds. As she turned off the light, Christopher called out, "Mama, you're the best mama in the whole world." "And you're the best boys in the whole world," she replied. Walking downstairs, she found David in the kitchen, making tea. He'd been there for dinner but had stayed to help with bedtime. Somewhere along the way, he'd become part of their routine, their family. Heavy questions tonight, he said, having heard the conversation. They're getting older. The questions will get harder. David pulled her into a gentle hug. You handled it perfectly. You always do. I don't always feel perfect. Sometimes I feel like I'm making it up as I go. Every parent does. But Madison, those boys, they're so secure, so loved. You broke the cycle. Victoria's poison stops with you. She pulled back to look at him. They had been together 2 years now, taking things slow, building trust. David, I need to tell you something. Connor called again. He wants to send letters to the boys. Not to see them, just letters for when they're older. His therapist thinks it would help his recovery. David considered this. What do you think? I think maybe it's time. Not for him to be in their lives, but for them to know he exists and isn't a monster, just a broken person trying to heal. Then that's what you should do. Trust your instincts. They haven't been wrong yet. That weekend, Madison met Connor at a coffee shop. He looked different, older, thinner, but clearer somehow. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been wisdom earned through pain. Thank you for coming, he said, not trying to shake her hand or hug her. He knew he'd lost that right. I'm here for the boys, not for you. I know. He pulled out a box. These are letters. One for each birthday until they are 18. If they never want to read them, I understand. But I needed to write them. Madison took the box. What do they say? That I'm sorry, that they deserve better, that their mother is the strongest person I've ever known, that my weakness isn't their burden to carry, and stories about their grandmother Elizabeth, things Alexander told me that they should know, good things, before Victoria poisoned it all. I'll keep them safe. When they're ready, they can decide. Connor nodded, then stood to leave. He paused at the door. Madison, that man you're with. David, he's good. He's what they deserve. I know. I'm glad you found happiness. He left then, and Madison knew she'd never see him again. He moved to California, changed his name, built a quiet life helping others escape abusive families. He never remarried, never had other children. The boys were his only legacy, even if he'd never know them, 10 years after that night in the rain. Madison stood in the same spot where Thomas had walked her to the gate a decade ago. The Sterling mansion was being demolished, Alexander's final act of erasing Victoria's legacy. In its place would be a park, with a playground and a memorial garden for victims of domestic violence. Daniel and Christopher, now 12, stood beside her, tall for their age, confident in ways she'd never been at 12. This is where it happened? Daniel asked. Where she kicked you out? This is where my life really began, Madison corrected. Where I learned what I was capable of. Were you scared? Christopher asked. Terrified, but sometimes the scariest moments lead to the strongest futures. Alexander joined them, leaning heavily on a cane now, but still sharp, still present. Ready? He asked. Madison nodded. Together they watched the wrecking ball take its first swing. The walls that had imprisoned her crumbled like paper. The boys cheered as if it were fireworks. David arrived with hot chocolate for everyone, kissing Madison's cheek, ruffling the boy's hair. He wore a simple gold band now. They'd married quietly 2 years ago. No Sterling money involved, just their chosen family in Madison's garden. Mom, can we go to the foundation after this? Daniel asked. I promised to read to the little kids. Of course, sweetheart. As they walked away from the demolition, leaving the past and rubble behind them, Madison felt Elizabeth's presence one last time. A whisper on the wind. You did it. You saved them. You saved us all. The Sterling name would fade from memory, but the Elizabeth Sterling Foundation would endure. Victoria's cruelty had created its own opposite, a legacy of strength, survival, and love that no amount of money or power could destroy. That night, Madison stood in her garden one last time, looking at the stars. The boys were asleep. David was inside grading papers. Alexander was in the guest room he stayed in every Sunday night now. Her phone buzzed with a message from a woman in Texas whose husband had just thrown her out. She was pregnant, scared, alone. The woman had seen Madison's story, found the foundation's number. Hold on, Madison typed back. We're coming. You're not alone anymore. She made 3 calls, set the rescue in motion. By morning, the woman would be safe, would begin her own journey from victim to survivor to thriver. Madison went inside, checked on her boys one more time. They slept peacefully, unaware of the battle that had been fought for their existence, knowing only love, only safety, only the strength their mother had carved out of catastrophe. The storm had passed, the mansion had fallen. But here in Brooklyn, in a brownstone full of laughter and life, Madison Rossi had built something unshakable. She had won not through revenge but through resilience, not through hatred but through hope, not by becoming like Victoria, but by becoming everything Victoria could never be, truly, authentically, powerfully herself. The billionaire father-in-law's revenge had been swift and total. But Madison's revenge was eternal. It was the lives she'd saved, the children she'd raised, the love she'd fostered. It was proving that no amount of cruelty could kill kindness, that no darkness could extinguish light. As she crawled into bed beside David, feeling safe and loved and whole, Madison smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new women to help, new battles to fight. But tonight she was exactly where she belonged, home.